Oh, hi everyone. So let's get this out of the way right from the beginning. The Legion Lenovo Go S is one of the most comfortable, one of the most beautiful, one of the best feeling handhelds I've ever held in my hand, and I would never buy it. Well, I'd never buy this model, the Windows version, because this is the Ryzen Z2 model with Windows. It comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte of disk space, and it costs $730 from Best Buy. That's just too much. You can get a ROG Ally X for just a hair more, or maybe even cheaper if you get one of those open box deals. And the Ally X is actually pretty much better in every conceivable way, every metric out there. And it's almost like Lenovo's got themselves in the headspace of making like laptops or PCs for offices where you could set a price point that's fairly high and people will buy it because they're going to buy like 700 and there's going to be enterprise licensing and bundles and all sorts of software coupons and stuff. And that works on a certain economy of scale with a large business. It doesn't work when you're a single person buying just one handheld for yourself or maybe as a gift. All that being said, Lenovo is releasing essentially the same handheld for $550. It has 16 gigs less RAM, and it is $50 more than they told us at CES. They said it was going to be $499, and it's $50 more than that. But that's the one I would definitely go ahead and buy that because I have installed SteamOS 3.8.0, and I'm going to essentially preview the SteamOS version of this Legion Go S, which is coming in about a month. It's coming in May. It's going to be in some sort of cosmic nebula purple, which I'm kind of jazzed for. And all the great things about this particular handheld, its size, ergonomics, controls, beautiful screen, those are all still going to be in play. It's just going to be a lot cheaper, like $200 cheaper. And oh, by the way, it'll have SteamOS built in. All your games will probably play better than they do on here, even with the beta, because it's not optimized yet. So yeah, it's going to be a cheaper handheld with a more optimized operating system. It's just a win, 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 win. All I do is win. I'm not going to go super crazy in benchmarking because the retail model of the Legion Go S with SteamOS is going to have less RAM, but you'll get the idea. So let's dive in. So there are essentially two ways to get SteamOS on here. The first is Bazite, which I actually did immediately upon receipt of this handheld from my best friend foreverist, Katie. Hi, Katie. Then, like 2 days later, Valve dropped the latest version of SteamOS, which lets you just flash it natively to the device. So I partitioned off a little chunk of the existing hard drive for Windows to live on, and then I went to town through SteamOS on here. And so here's what you're probably going to see on the SteamOS version of the Legion Go S. You know what? That's kind of a mouthful. So we're just going to call it the Lenovo deck from now on, okay? We're going to talk about the screen. We're going to talk about the controls, ergonomics, battery life, and battery performance. And finally, what sort of power we're dealing with here. So first off is this screen. This is an 8-inch 1920 by 1200 IPS screen with a refresh rate of 120 Hertz. It really punches above its weight class here. And to me at least, it's almost as good as a solid OLED panel. I really like the overall size, the crispness, the vibrance, and how inky black some of the darks can get. It is a very solid screen. Now there's nothing revolutionary about the buttons and the D-pad and the sticks, but they're all really solid. The D-pad is fairly precise and the buttons are super responsive and satisfying to press. They're not too loud. They have a nice tactile feel to them. They're really good buttons. The sticks have a really good range of motion and feel pretty good to use. My only real complaint with the sticks is in games where you're using the left stick, like in Mechwarrior here for throttle control. My thumb starts to get tired from holding the stick forward for the entire time. It's not bad, but like a half hour into a fight with some pirates with my janked out Centurion here, my left thumb starts to get a little tired. Otherwise, I have no complaints about the sticks or any of the controls, honestly. The trackpad on here is tiny. It is small enough that I never accidentally pressed it. And when I was using it in Windows mode, it was only really for emergency precision stuff because the touchscreen's there. So it's not like you're going to be using it enough for the small size to be an issue. I think it's much better than the trackpad on the previous iteration that you'd manhandle on accident all the time. Or, you might be upset by this, I think it's better than the 2 trackpads you have on a Steam Deck, which I very rarely ever used. Trigger locks. So there are these little switches behind the triggers that let you switch from full draw to clicky button triggers. So here's the difference. This one's on and it turns into a button, compared to... So you have a clicky button over here like you get on some Xbox controllers. Now, I never really used the clicky trigger setting, but I can see how it might be good for multiplayer first-person shooter games. Now, I'll never use it, but it's cool that it's there, and I know other people will appreciate it. It is an all-or-nothing deal, though, so it's not like you can go halfway and get a little bit more pull. It's either on or off, so you can't, like, fine-tune the weight of the trigger. Something to keep in mind. So, ergonomics. I gave up my Steam Deck to my cousin because he's laid up in the hospital for a while and he needed something to do while he's just sitting there. So I can't do a one-to-one comparison. But I was one of those people who always thought it was just a skosh too long and too thin in the middle. Now the Legion deck here is a little bit thicker in the middle, and who among us isn't a little bit thicker around the middle than they'd like? But just like my sweet dad bod, the extra thickness here behind the screen, it really lends to the overall ergonomics of the device. It's really well balanced, and I never got any real hand fatigue from long playing sessions, shooting pirates in my mech, or screaming at my son while killing Nordic zombies. Boy! Now this handheld weighs a little over 1.5 pounds, but the weight distribution and the sturdiness of this core area here really makes it easy to hold and play. They also ditched the Joy-Cons, so the whole device feels like a unified experience instead of that weird feel you got on the original, or something like the One X Player 2 Pro. I think Nintendo gets away with it because the Switch is relatively tiny, but even then, you get a ton of people that end up putting it in a rigid case with grips, and then of course they made the Switch Lite because they realized Joy-Cons are kind of a gimmick. The rounded corners on this, the placement of the triggers, the back buttons, we didn't even talk about the back buttons, you got Y2 and Y1, all of this stuff make this handheld extremely comfortable to hold. And that's important because with the right games and the right TDP settings, you can play this for a while. Now this is running official SteamOS, but it's not the same exact version that will be released for the Legion deck. So TDP control on this is achieved not over here, but through some button shortcuts. So you can, let's cycle through here. Starting with blue, you have extreme economy mode. This works out like, I don't know, 7 or 8 TDP. Then you go to your Steam Deck equivalent, which is this white light, and that's about 15 watts. Red here is 28 watts, and then this purple is turbo mode. And if you're plugged in, this thing can really put out the juice. I did the majority of my testing in this white 15 watt mode, but you can always crank it, Soldier Boy, and get better performance on a lot of titles. Especially if something's going at like 30 FPS on 15 watts, well heck, crank it up to turbo mode, you might get up to 60 FPS by throttling your power. This is going to burn through your battery faster, but it'll get you to that next tier of games that aren't listed in the Plays Great on Deck tab. I'm going to show a variety of games here with the details on screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So up first we have Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries. This is a game that'll run okay on Steam Deck, but it's got that yellow check mark that means there are some issues. Running at that Steam Deck level at 15-ish watts, you can play this for 2 or 3 hours at 720p at medium detail settings. You can also bump up the resolution and detail levels at those higher power levels and maintain 60 FPS with prettier graphics, although it's at the expense of battery life. Hey. So here we got Spider-Man Miles Morales. You can get this game running really well at 15 watt TDP with medium settings and some tweaks, and you can really bump it up a lot with those two higher power settings. That guy looks like a douchebag. Now, God of War on here can run at ultra detail at 50 FPS on 15 TDP without any Deity plugins or anything. Just these settings you have here on the screen on the side. It's really cinematic and it plays great. This is probably going to see even more optimization as the software is tweaked specifically for the Legion deck here. I have to go find my boy! Help me out, boy. Now, Cyberpunk runs really well on here at that 15 watt TDP on medium settings. If you turn on frame gen in the settings, you can hit 60 FPS, but it kind of looks blurry to me. You can always bump up the power draw for a higher level of detail at 60 FPS, or just lock down the FPS down to like 30 and deal with it at 15 watt TDP. Hey! Hey, we gotta swap insurance. We gotta swap insurance. Stop. Ow! Now listen, officer. Oh God. Oh God. Came right for me. Hey! Trying to be polite here. Yoink. Come on, Jackie. No, I won't be stopping. So here we have Mechwarrior 5 Clans. Now this is one that's borderline unplayable on the Steam Deck unless you do all sorts of tweaks to the INI files. Now with just some basic settings changes using the options in your performance menu, you can get a little bit under 30 FPS. It says it's like 25 FPS, but it feels okay. I think it's because you're driving a giant, clunky, 3-story tall robot. Now if you do tweak the INI files and mess with Deity tools, you can get 50 or 60 FPS at that 15 watt TDP. But here's where the extra power comes in. You bump it up to 25 watts or turbo mode, and you're sitting pretty without any plugins. Or you can run games at an absurd level of detail with the plugins and with frame gen turned on. So yeah, running a little bit chunky. Let's take it up to 25 watt TDP. Much smoother. And then to round out this little showcase is Dark Deity. Now this is a pretty low power draw game. I'm setting it down to the lowest setting. And I'm showing you this because this particular beta version of SteamOS doesn't have the super extreme low power scaling you could get on the Steam Deck. So you're going to end up with worse battery life overall on something that's very low intensity, just because right now, and it's probably going to change when they have the official release, but right now you're running at something like 7 to 10 TDP instead of maybe 4. skill issue.
Damn, I'm good.
Steady.
Too easy.
Well, Gary, it's time for What Did We Learn? And we learned that slapping the latest beta image of SteamOS 3.8 onto the Legion Go S results in something extremely close to what we're going to get from the upcoming Legion deck. It's not perfect because it's not 100% designed for this, but it works very, very well. And it's almost certainly going to work even better on the real Legion deck and the other Legion Go models once there is official support. Valve probably has a ton more optimizations for both this chipset and for the physical layout of this device. Basically, what we see here is probably the tip of the iceberg. Now, would I recommend you go out and buy this $730 model of the Legion Go S and put SteamOS on it? No, don't do that. If you want to go that route, get a ROG Ally X and go to town. You'll get better everything for just a few dollars more, or heck, maybe even cheaper if you find an open box sale somewhere. Now, that being said, the Legion deck version coming in May at just over $500 is something I will almost certainly recommend. You're getting a device that beats the Steam Deck in pretty much every metric other than price, and it's going to be sitting on the shelves at Best Buy. Now, the fact that the Legion deck is going to be on the shelves at Best Buy is a really big deal. It's not something niche that you have to order online. It'll be sitting there, chained to a kiosk next to the Switch 2s. I was in a Best Buy a few days ago helping my wife's friend get a TV, and I saw a bunch of stuff that used to be available only online, or maybe like in the back corner of a mega nerd store like Micro Center. Now they're on the shelves, and you can walk in and buy one off the street without any nonsense ordering from China or like Indiegogo campaigns. I think a lot of people are going to slide into the hobby this way, and that'll be good because more consumer pressure will lead to more demand, more interest, and hopefully we'll get some price wars going. Maybe we'll see the Legion deck going for sub $500 later in the year. Or maybe some other laptop companies are going to try to get in on this trend since SteamOS licensing is significantly cheaper than Windows. Who knows? I do know that this thing with SteamOS has quickly become my favorite x86 device. Now, the Ally X is eventually going to regain its title once my save spot shows up and I set it up with its own version of SteamOS. But for an out-of-the-box solution, it's going to be hard to beat the Legion deck. Now, there's an argument to be made that the old LCD Steam Deck is a better value proposition, or that the OLED one might be a better overall buy, but this form factor appeals to me a lot more than the Steam Deck did. If this video appealed to you more than you anticipated, please like and subscribe and all that jazz. And if you want to see a showcase, leave games you'd like to see in the comments. I'm probably not going to buy a ton of new games just to test them, but between everyone on the RH team, we've got a ton of games in our shared Steam libraries. So let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and goodbye!